Hello and welcome to this session on iVend Retail 6.5 licensing. My name is Manish and I'll be your host for the next about 45 minutes to an hour. I see a lot of people joining in. Let's wait for another a minute or so before we actually get started. And as always, thank you so much for an overwhelming response. And while we wait for people to join, just a confirmation that I am audible enough. Could you press the hand icon on the GoToWebinar panel to confirm that I'm audible enough? Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, James. Very good. So today is going to be a slightly long session and a very interesting one at that. And I have today in the session visitors from western part of the world, pretty late in the night there, and from eastern part of the world, pretty late in the evening. So I'm currently conducting this session from India, and I think let's get started. And as people join in, I will keep kind of doing a recap. So thank you very much for joining the session on licensing in iVend Retail 6.5. My name is Manish and I'll be your host for the next about 45 minutes to an hour or so. Today's session is going to be one, of course, slightly lengthy and more importantly, a really important one at that. We're going to talk about the licensed components in 6.5. I mean, nothing additional has been added in 6.5, the couple of changes which I will talk about, but these licensed components have been there with us for a while. So I thought it will be important that I do a recap of all the licensed components in this session on licensing. We've also changed the licensing mechanism for back office users of Management Console. This was incorporated since the previous release, which was 6.4 or 2, but I thought it's important that I mention that important, should I say, addition or a change or a flexibility in today's session. I will also talk about what does it take to upgrade from an earlier version to a 6.5 and how do you view the overall license entitlement from within the Management Console. So with that as the broad agenda set for the next about 45 minutes, let's get started. So the licensed components in iVend Retail broadly are, I would say, three categories, though I'm showing here four categories, but broadly there are three categories. The first category is where a module can be licensed on a perpetual and a subscription licensing model. So I'm using the word on-premise and perpetual as synonyms, wherein a perpetual license actually means you have a license and a software assurance component, whereas a subscription is a pure subscription model of licensing. So as I said, three broad categories rather than the four that you're seeing here, three broad categories. The first one, which is both on-premise as well as subscription, as in perpetual and subscription. The second category is only subscription-based modules. And the third category is only a perpetual or only on-premise based licensing modules which are covered in that licensing model. So the first set is this, where we have on-premise or perpetual and subscription, and the second category is only subscription. The third category is only perpetual or only on-premise licensing. So here we have iVend Terminal or Mobile Point of Sale, iVend Store, iVend Store Server, an additional back office user, and iVend E-commerce. And as we move along, I'll explain these in detail. Though all the partners present here and also all the customers present here in today's call understand the licensing model and the new ones that we've introduced, but I think for the benefit of the audience, I will still cover them. So the on-premise and perpetual subscription-based, on-premise perpetual and subscription-based modules are iVend Terminal Mobile Point or a Mobile Point of Sale, iVend Store Server, additional back office users, iVend E-commerce. On this side, we have the different ERP connectors, which is which are SAP IS Retail Connector, SAP ECC 6 6.0 ABAP Connector, SAP Business One SQL Integration Connector, SAP Business One HANA Integration Connector, and Microsoft Dynamics NAV 2013 integration. And we'll shortly be launching the Dynamics 2016 integration also. But these are the ones which are both available on perpetual licensing and subscription licensing both. What is important for me to mention here, and a significant change that we incorporated since 6.4 R2 and continued that in 6.5, is that iVend terminal point of sale and mobile point of sale licenses are now interchangeable. That means earlier what used to happen was you could either buy terminal licenses or you could buy mobile point of sale licenses, and you could never interchange them. So we have now extended the flexibility where you can now interchange a mobile point of sale license to a terminal point of sale license and vice versa. So that's a great, should I say, benefit that we're extending to the retailers by allowing point of sale licenses to be absolutely interchangeable. There is another licensed component, iVend Store Server, which includes one back office user license. So that's one back office user, or the management console user as it is still very popularly known, is included. Similarly, iVend Enterprise Server is included in the overall licensing, and one back office user is also included for iVend Enterprise. Additional back office users are licensed component. We could call them back office users, we can call them management console users. So the terminology is interchangeable. And then we have e-commerce, which is available again on perpetual and subscription. The pure subscription-based modules are iVend Forecasting, applicable only in the case of an unplugged version of iVend. iVend Web Viewers, which are essentially licenses that allow retailers to view the dashboards on a mobile handheld device. iVend Handheld, which is essentially a device, an RF-based device, which is used predominantly for warehousing function, receiving of goods, counting of goods, etc. iVend Loyalty Customer Portal, and iVend Parcel. So these are pure subscription-based modules. And then we have SAP Business One add-ons, Item Matrix and iCharge predominantly, which are only available on on-premise and a perpetual licensing model. Let's move on to the next slide, where I try and explain the licensing in subtle more detail. So listed on the screen are the perpetual and subscription-based modules available both on either on-premise perpetual plus software assurance licensing model, or on a monthly / annual subscription-based licensing model. So the first set is the iVend on-premise and subscription. So iVend point of sale and terminal, iVend point of sale, terminal and mobile. These are interchangeable licenses, as I said. The iVend Store Server includes one back office user. Additional back office users could be for store or the head office. And only one back office user license is included per store and enterprise server in the license. All other users are require an additional license. Then we have iVend e-commerce. iVend e-commerce is licensed per site, as in per domain name and per company database. The new version that we're coming up for iVend 1.6 would allow you to have multiple storefronts. So like, for example, apparel.ivendecommerce.com and footwear.ivendecommerce.com. So all those such subdomains, if you may, would be a separate iVend e-commerce license. So that's a very important point, though it's not explained very clearly in this, because that will happen in 1.6, which is due for release very shortly. But iVend e-commerce currently is licensed for every domain. So let's say cupsandgoblets.com. So you have one license for that. And then we have the ERP connectors, which are available both as an on-premise and subscription licensing. The SAP IS Retail Connector is licensed per PI instance, also called the PO in the recent times. The ECC6 is per server. The SAP Business One SQL integration is per company database. SAP Business One HANA integration is per company database. And Dynamics NAV 2013 integration and also 2016 integration would be per company database. So that's as far as these set of modules are concerned, be it on-premise perpetual and subscription. So these modules are available in both modes, the on-premise mode or the perpetual mode and the subscription mode. So let's move on to the next one, where we only talk about the subscription-based modules. So these are modules which can only be licensed in a subscription-based licensing model. So these are iVend forecasting, which is per company database per year. iVend web viewer is per user per year. iVend handheld is for every handheld device. iVend loyalty, before I explain iVend loyalty, the thing that I want to mention is every time, rather the first time iVend retailer is licensed, a retailer gets 1,000 loyalty cards for free. I mean, these are included. So iVend loyalty is licensed by every loyalty card and or every loyalty account, and there are different tiers available. So per year for up to 10,000 loyalty accounts, per year for up to 100,000, per year for up to 1,000,000 loyalty accounts, and per year for every additional 1,000 loyalty accounts. So that's how iVend loyalty is licensed, and exactly similar is the way the loyalty customer portal is licensed. And time permitting, I'll show you the iVend loyalty customer portal as to how does it look like. Essentially, an ability extended by the retailer to the consumer to go online at a particular portal or a website for them to register themselves, to see their loyalty points, the accumulated point, and the transaction history. They would be able to see their transaction receipts, graphically see how they have accumulated the points and how they have redeemed the points. So that's the customer loyalty portal very briefly. And then we have iVend passes, which are digital passes allowing retailer to send out gift cards, coupons, and loyalty cards to the customers digitally via email. So these are licensed as 10,000 notifications per month, 50,000 notifications per month, 100,000 notifications per month, and 1,000,000 notifications per month. A notification could be construed as best understood as an email that is sent out. So 10,000 emails being sent out every month, all the way up to 1,000,000 emails being sent out a month. So that's how the passes are licensed. And then we have the last bit, which is my on-premise or perpetual licensing based modules. These are essentially SAP Business One add-ons and can only be licensed, as I said, on perpetual licensing model. So Item Matrix or iMatrix for SQL is per company database. Item Matrix or iMatrix 5-user pack for SQL. Similarly, iMatrix for HANA and Item Matrix for HANA for 5-user pack. These are all per company databases. Similarly, iCharge is per company database, and iCharge has a pack of 5 users. That's again per company database. And an additional iCharge gateway is also per company database. So that's as far as these licenses are concerned. So broadly, if I were to sum this up, you have 3 broad types of licensing categories, if you may. One set which is available both on perpetual and subscription, second set only on subscription, and third set only on perpetual. So with that said, I will take I will pause here, and if you have any questions, you can press the hand icon and I would be able to answer the question. You can always utilize the chat window, you can always utilize the questions window to ask any questions. This session need not be a monologue. Let this be an extremely interactive session. This is a very interesting topic, I would say, because we're talking about licensing and how things are licensed. So if you have any questions, you can ask straight away. using either of the two modes. You can always raise a hand and I can unmute the line if you want to. And of course, the session is being recorded, so you can have, you would be able to view the recording on Knowledge Portal in the next couple of days. So in any case, let's move on. And the second part, I would say, of the entire discussion is the licensing for Management Console users. So there was a big debate, okay, when retailers had to move from the older licensing model to the new licensing model, where we had introduced a licensed component of the store. So one set of retailers would say that they would like to have user-based licensing, and the other set of retailers expected us to have a device-based licensing. So what we did, we combined the best of the world. We said, okay, fine, it can be interchangeable. You can have user-based licensing, or you can have device-based licensing, and these are interchangeable licenses. So as you can see on the screen, the retailer will have the option to decide whether the licenses are to be allocated to devices or to the users. Okay, you can, in a retail environment, you could have a mix of both. Okay, you could have a device-based and or a user-based licensing, and you can change the licensing, should I say, entitlement or allocation at any point in time during the course of the operation. So what this essentially means is, as a user-based license, if the license is user-based, then you could log in from any of the devices. You can log in from any location, obviously, by keeping the same user ID and password. So just the same user, he can log into multiple different devices, all running management consoles. In a device-based license, the device is allocated a license, and you can have any number of users who connect to this particular device. And so so the way this works is, as I said, you can have any, in a device-based license, any management console user is allowed to log into that particular device, okay, which means multiple users can log into the same device irrespective of the user IDs. With their respective user IDs. Sorry about that. That would have been very expensive blip, I would say. Then there is a new user screen in Management Console under the retail configuration for creating device profiles. And whenever the Management Console is launched for the first time, and I'll explain this, what this first time mean, or what I really mean is when you upgrade from an older version to the 6.4 R2 version and above. So the system will launch a Management Console profile selection screen for the corresponding site ID. So let me try and explain this to you on the product as to where exactly would this happen. So I go to Management Console, I go to Retail Configuration, go to Management Console, and these are the different devices that I have. I press Edit, and if the licensing has to be a device-based license, so I would click this, define a device, and click this as saying that it has a license. So once I click this, I will have this particular device being used, being operated on a device-based licensing model. That's what I'm trying to explain here. We then have a user-based licensing model where every user is allocated a license. So somewhere in the application, and I'll show that to you, the security user setting, you would be able to allocate a license to that particular user, saying that this user has a license. So once the licensing is user-based, it doesn't really matter where the user is logging from. Let me go back to the screen and show this to you. And so I go to IT administration, authorization, security user. So let's say administrator. So a lot of information here, but what I'm trying to explain is this tick box which says this user has a license. And once I tick this off, then this user would be able to log into any of the devices because it's a user-based licensing. This user is covered under the user-based licensing model. Then we also have cloud-based deployment. So management console for cloud or hosted customers, those users predictably would be there would be no device-based licensing. It will only be user-based licensing. So as many number of users who want to connect to the application as back office users, you would have those many user licenses allocated to them. So that's a one-on-one combination. So you only have user-based licensing available for cloud or the hosted customers. So this brings me to the end of the second part of the whole discussion. And I'll again would open the forum for any questions. As I said, you can always ask them in the chat window using the questions box or the chat box. You can always raise your hand and I can answer the questions. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and raise your hand, ask me the question. So there's one question on upgrades. Yeah, that's a section I'm going to cover right now immediately after this, where what happens when what is the process essentially when you're upgrading from a 6.2 series to a 6.4 R2 or a 6.5, and similarly when you're upgrading from a 6.4X series to a 6.4 R2 or a 6.5. So that's a session that's coming up. Any other questions that you may have? All right, so if there are not many questions right now, I will move on and try and cover the last part of the discussion, where we talk about what is the process of upgrading from a 6.2.x series to a 6.4 R2 or a 6.5. So the reason I'm using a 6.4 R2 or a 6.5 here is because it was this version 6.4 where the new licensing model was incorporated. And when I say new licensing model, I'm essentially talking about ability to have device-based or user-based license interchangeably, ability to have terminal POS and a mobile POS licenses to be used interchangeably. So that's the change. This was the tripping point or the first place where we introduced the new licensing model, and hence I use both 6.4 R2 and 6.5 interchangeably. So when you're upgrading from 6.2.x, the first thing that you would need is to get a new set of licenses from licenses at cityaccess.com. So you would need a new license. The other thing that you have to ensure is that the CityAccess License Manager is installed on the same machine which is running the SQL Server for iVend Enterprise. And this is a mandatory step because we are trying to manage the device and user-based licensing from one single place. So it's important that the license manager is on the same machine which has the SQL Server for iVend Enterprise. So you activate the new license and then you upgrade from 6.2.x to 6.4 R2 or 6.5 either by running the installer or through the usual upgrading through automatic updates over the air. Sorry about this error here. Automatic updates over the air is what we wanted to say. Once you have upgraded, you launch the iVend Management Console application. The application expects you to furnish a customer ID, and this customer ID would be given to you along with the new license that you would be getting. So it'll be a part of the license, but you'll have to specify the customer ID. And as soon as the application upgrades, all the registered management consoles will be allocated as device-based licenses. Okay, and the license allocation obviously can be changed later from the management console at the enterprise to segregate between device licenses and user-based license. So, but initially everything is allocated as device-based license. The second set is relatively simple, where you want to upgrade from 6.4x to 6.4 R2 or 6.5. you simply have to, you don't have to get the new licenses because you already upgraded from a licensing standpoint, you're already on the new licensing regime or new licensing plan. You just have to upgrade the application by running the installer or installing or upgrading through automatic upgrades over the air. And once the upgrade is through, then the license entitlements can again be allocated or reallocated. This, of course, is an additional step. The application on upgrade maintains the original or the earlier license allocation, but the moment you upgrade, you obviously have the option of changing it. And lastly, is the license entitlement. So that's a new screen that we've added, which can be accessed from the IT administration menu. It gives you an understanding of how many licenses have been allocated and what is that overall license entitlement. So let me show that to you. Go to IT administration, license information. So I get to see the enterprise name, the edition type, entitlement count, and the entitlement balance. So how many stores, e-commerce, point of sale, management console licenses, loyalty cards, etc. These are what I'm entitled for, and this is what the balance is. Again, a very handy tool when you're trying to manage device and user-based licensing from one single place. Sorry. So that's, I would say, largely it from a licensing standpoint. I mean, I covered, as I said, I've covered the different license components and their explanations, licensing of back office users of management console as to availability as a device-based license or the user-based license. How do you upgrade from earlier versions, and where do you get to see your license entitlement? So with that, I would like to open the lines for any question and answer. If you have any, please, as I said, raise your hand using the hand icon, or use the questions chat window or the chat window to ask your questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. In any case, the recording is available on the Knowledge portal. You can surely get in touch with me by writing an email, and I'll be more than happy to answer the questions. So please go ahead. It's all right if you don't have any questions for now. We can you can just assimilate the information that I've given you, and we can again, as I said, discuss this in a subsequent session. Till then, thank you very much for joining us, and have a great day ahead.